I am here with my friend Oliver, and I just met you in person for the first time, and I'm so excited. So thank you for doing this.
It is an honor to meet you personally. You have had such an amazing impact in terms of blowing my mind in a relatively short period of time. So it's really, truly an honor. I know we got an opportunity to kind of talk in front of quite a relatively large number of the Bitcoiners that sort of follow me, and that was a very informative and very powerful, impactful talk to my group. But now we get an opportunity to talk in person, so that's very special to me.
Yeah, and hang out a bit afterwards too. I'm loving it. So thank you for the compliments, and likewise, I want to thank you too. Oliver has been a big supporter of mine. He's been very encouraging and very helpful to me as I've navigated being online for the first time to this degree. So I'd love to learn more about you, your background, your view on Bitcoin, perhaps what has been blowing your mind, both from things I've said and others. And so anyway, before we get to all that, you have a background on Wall Street.
Yes.
Most people that are perhaps learning about Bitcoin for the first time, they have no idea how Wall Street works. They have no idea what that world is like. What was it like for you?
Well, it was extraordinarily difficult. I became interested in the markets in the very early 1980s, and quickly I realized that this is what I really wanted to do with my entire life. I wanted to learn about money. I wanted to learn about what money is, how money operates, how to manage money. And I started in the very early 1980s when I was relatively young. I managed to, over a 6-7 year period, get to a place where a professional firm accepted me on their trading team. And that was a pretty big feat in and of itself, because most trading organizations on Wall Street only accepted Ivy League college graduates, and I was not one of those. But after multiple attempts, there was a firm that sort of accepted me. I got accepted into on a professional trading team in December of 1986, and that started off a career that I'm very, very proud of. I traded professionally on the street for a number of years, but something really interesting happened in late 1988, 1989, which was in the wake of the crash of 1987. And what happened was the first step toward Wall Street becoming basically the first step toward Wall Street stepping into the digital space happened in late 1988 and 1989. And that was with the creation of a system called SOS, which stands for Small Order Execution System. And in the wake of the crash of 1987, Congress in the United States demanded that the NASDAQ market create a system that was entirely electronic, that did not require any human intervention, for small orders to basically go to the market for buys and sells without any human intervention. Well, I was one of the early traders, one of the first 8 traders to be on that system in late 1988, early 1989. And so I was at the start of the whole market becoming more and more digitized, moving from a personalized based business to a completely digital one, the one that we see today. I've watched the New York Stock Exchange floor go from being packed with individuals to now being practically a ghost town. I've seen fees that were astronomical in the mid 1980s to late 1980s go to zero, such as free commissions on Robinhood and things of that nature. So I've seen not only the democratization of the market during my career, I've seen the digitization of the market. I've seen the elimination of tens of thousands of human-based jobs in my industry. And I believe that this background made it somewhat easier for me, being in the traditional finance space, to understand the disruptive nature of what a technology can do. And I believe that seeing this happen to my industry, seeing this happen to Wall Street, made it easier for me to see from a visionary point of view what Bitcoin was capable of doing to the traditional financial industry and beyond. And a lot of people ask me, like, what made me get it? And I believe that that's at the core of what made me get it, because I lived through a complete revolutionary change in my industry, and it was connected to money. And I believe that Bitcoin has emerged really more as an evolution, more than a revolution, but an evolution of what that process began. That process that I lived through began taking power from the hands of individuals and groups and organizations and placing it in the hands of individuals through the small order execution system. And ultimately, that led to individuals basically being able to make their own decisions from their own laptops in the own comfort of their homes. This was an absolute impossibility when I started in this space. So seeing that huge evolution occur helped me, from a visionary point of view, see what potentially Bitcoin could do as an extension of that.
The next step, you know,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did not know that. So you were one of the first eight people that saw that, and going from, and that's very fascinating to me, because obviously you talk a lot about technology. And so perhaps from the very beginning of the stock market, you know, back with the Dutch, to that moment in the 80s, the late 80s, yes, there was more change in your career, or at least the later parts of your career, than those hundreds of years before, going from paper to paper to paper, and then no more paper.
That's a very, very fascinating way to take a look at it that way. That more change happened over a 20-year period, and happened in hundreds of years. And in addition to that, the price decline.
Yeah.
I watched my first trade, my first professional trade, was 1,000 shares of a company called Intel. Some of you might be familiar with that, right? It cost me $1,500 to place that order, that professional order. And to sell that professional order cost me an additional $1,500. So
in those
that
dollars,
trade, yes. And that's right, in those dollars back in the early to mid 1980s, right? So think about it. I'm $3,000 underwater before I can make my first single penny, my first single dollar in the trade, all right? And those were institutional rates at the time. I watched prices go from $3,000 a trade to, in less than a decade, $25 for the same trade. And then in another decade, less than 6 cents for the trade. And in a few years after that, zero for the trade.
Yeah.
Prices collapsed.
Yeah.
And seeing that made me realize that technology, the advancements of technology, the efficiencies of technology drive prices to zero. So when we take this concept to Bitcoin, it was easy for me to see that this technology has the potential of driving everything towards zero forever. Forever. We got to a place where not only were fees practically zero, but the markets, the exchanges, actually paid a rebate for you to trade there. So a lot of people don't realize that the equity market in particular, because that was my specialty, the equity market is very splintered. Many people think of it as being one location, like the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, but the equity markets have traditionally, especially in the early part of the digital age, where the markets were very fractured. So these fractured exchanges and entities vied for you to bring your activity to them. And in order to do that, they paid what's called a rebate for you to send your buy and sell orders to them versus another competing exchange. This rebate made the cost of trading negative. So the very, very small cost it dropped to was superseded by the rebate the exchanges paid for you. So traders actually started to trade for the rebate and not for the gain in the trade. Because just by trading the stock back and forth with no movement, you made a net positive return on the rebate, you know, versus the lower cost of the actual transaction itself. So this is kind of what I see Bitcoin accomplishing now. When I compare most of the things of value in the world, in terms of Bitcoin, if I create a chart of anything of value priced in Bitcoin, the chart is straight down. If I compare the S&P 500, if I price the S&P 500 in Bitcoin, the chart is a straight bear market downtrend. If I price the NASDAQ market in Bitcoin, the price is straight down. In gold, straight down. In Tesla, straight down. In virtually anything, bonds, straight down. Gold, straight down. If I price anything of value or most things in value in the price of Bitcoin, the chart straight down, it's sending everything perpetually towards zero. Yeah. But I lived this. I saw this. I saw this happen before Bitcoin. So that's what made it relatively, I say, easy. It wasn't easy initially. Yeah. And there's a story behind that too.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear that story in a minute. I have a question. Yes. So do you think it is Bitcoin that is sending everything towards zero, or do you think it is just that Bitcoin is reflecting the free market incentives? So take your example regarding with the fees. You know, it was the free market that was incentivizing them to go down and down and down and down perpetually. And that was before Bitcoin. So do you think it's that Bitcoin is causing it, or do you think that Bitcoin is just the way at which we are pricing that, or the way we're accurately reflecting the productivity gains?
Well, that's a good question, because one could also ask, because everything that we, especially in the Western world, everything that we value, we're valuing through the eyes of a declining fiat currency, the US dollar. Correct. Right? That we are seeing more of the effect of the declining nature of the unit of account versus what Bitcoin is actually doing to those things. Because Bitcoin is a constant, because it's locked in place, 21 million, that we're seeing the constant, when we start to look at everything through the constant, everything is declining against the constant. And maybe it's not necessarily what Bitcoin is doing, maybe it's the failure of what is not constant. Right? Yeah. So that's an interesting way to look at it. But, you know, just to also touch upon the 21 million cap, I'm of the thought, and I would like your opinion on this, I'm of the thought, Luke, that Bitcoin doesn't have an inflation rate. And I know that's a popular talking point in the Bitcoin community. I'm not so sure I buy into that, because there are a lot of people who want to compare Bitcoin's inflation rate to the US dollar's inflation rate, to gold's inflation rate. But does Bitcoin really have an inflation rate when you know the ultimate supply cap? I believe that inflation comes into relevance when you don't know an ultimate supply cap. That's when inflation, the concept of inflation, is born. But when you start off knowing, I have 21 million to distribute, how is there an inflation rate? And the example I'd use, if I started a shoe company and I started my shoe company with 21 pairs of shoes, and I sell 19 shoes, did I inflate my 21 supply? I didn't. I started with 21. I sold 19. I didn't inflate the 21 pairs of shoes, right? So my view is similar. Bitcoin has 21 million. The Bitcoin network has issued roughly 19.5 million, 19,400,000, whatever it is. But it didn't inflate the 21 million cap that was known from the start of the Bitcoin network. So inflation would come into being if Bitcoin's network somehow got changed to being 22 million. Yeah. Now there's an inflation rate. Anyway, that's my point. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great question. I would largely agree with that. I think of other topics, like when explaining the solar system, you have the planets and they're all really big and they're right next to each other, and it's like you explain to a child, this is what this is, but that's not really what it is. And so Gotcha. When explaining Bitcoin, I just say inflation rate because that's what people understand. But I think you're correct. The better term is an issuance rate.
It's an issuance
It's an
rate.
issuance.
Yes, I agree with that.
And
Yes.
people ask, well, okay, and the reason why it's harder for people to understand, I think, is because if you explain it's issuance, well, why does it need to be issuance at all? Why not have them all at first? But then obviously the problem then is that if you had all 21 million at first, people would have been able to buy them all up when they were 6 cents, $3, $30. And so there has to be an issuance so that when the miners are putting in the work for the network, then that can be released to them and it can be fairly equitably distributed on the miners who then have to sell it onto the market. So yeah, I would agree with you that an inflation is increasing the total supply, and that Bitcoin's inflation rate is probably more accurately an issuance.
Yeah,
right?
and I agree with that. I'm certainly not trying to suggest that there's no benefit in explaining it that way, because sometimes we need some point of a point of reference for other things that we consider of value. And so since everything else has an inflation rate, it kind of helps sometimes when you look at how low Bitcoin's issuance rate, which we call an inflation rate, is, and it's becoming lower and lower. So
I think another really good example of that is the number that we're talking about itself, 21 million. Like even on my shirt it says 21 million. But in reality, there's two things wrong with that. Number one is that it's not actually 21 million.
It's actually a little bit less.
It's actually 20 million and it's
right.
actually a few satoshis less than 20 million technically.
Yes.
And then number two, and this one's even more surprising to people, is that there is no such thing as a Bitcoin.
No,
there are only satoshis.
Right.
Yes,
Absolutely. There's only satoshis. Right.
This really shouldn't say 21 million.
What's interesting about that is that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Satoshi did actually speak of a single Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But in reality, yes, there's no such thing as a single Bitcoin.
Yeah,
There's only Satoshis. And I think through the Lightning Network, there's even there's smaller units than the Satoshi. So there's the MSAT, there's the Satoshi, which is 1/1,000,000th. There's the MSAT, and then there's the whatever SAT, and this can be divided ad infinitum. It's programmable money, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love it.
Now, let me ask you this. See, you're excited. And hopefully a lot of people watching this understand why you're excited. But why is it that having that infinite divisibility down and down and down, why does that excite you? Because to some people, when they're trying to understand that, it's like, well, what's the difference? Instead of inflating the currency forever, you're just going down infinitely divisible. What's the difference there? Why does that excite you?
Divisibility is not increasing the supply, as we know. If I were to take a pizza, that's the very popular analogy. Right? If I were to take a pizza and divide it into 8 slices, and then divide it from 8 slices to 12 slices, I haven't increased the pie. I've diminished the number of units. And so unit of account, is the unit of something, is one of the characteristics of money. And one of the failings of this technology we call money, one of the historical failings has been the problem of divisibility. For instance, at one particular point, cows were considered money. How do you buy milk with a cow? Well, you wouldn't buy milk, but how do you buy a pair of shoes with a cow? And you'd have to kill your cow and chop a little tiny piece of the cow off, and then what do you do with the rest? So gold had this problem of divisibility. Cows had the problem of divisibility. This is one of the most important characteristics of money, and for the first time, we have a money that does not have a divisibility problem. We have a money that is infinitely divisible, and it solved forever the divisibility problem. And I think it's important for people to understand that money is a technology. Like, people somehow, or for some reason, they separate money from tech, but money is the ultimate technology. And money has been evolving through the human experience, from when tools were used as money, from when seashells were used as money, beads were used as money, rocks were used as money, and so forth and so on. So each evolution has tended to get better because, quite naturally, we as humans seek out the best qualities of money. And one of those qualities is near perfect or perfect divisibility. And for the first time, Bitcoin gives us perfect divisibility.
So a counter to that, when it comes to that, if I were to ask you, why not just have a digital currency that uses gold? Why make something new and have that be infinitely divisible when I could just have a bar of gold? And with technology, with blockchain technology, we can just create a digital asset that's backed by gold, and that could be infinitely divisible. Why is Bitcoin better than that?
Well, first of all, because gold is physical. And we no longer live in a world where the physical or the analog is the thing of choice, or is the lasting thing of value. So think about it like this way. Because gold was physical, it could be co-opted. Because gold was physical, it could be accumulated and amassed by governments, by entities or organizations of power. It could be confiscated. It could be stolen from you. But Bitcoin is literally in the ether. It is not physical. It is speech. It is words. It is math. For instance, how does someone steal the number 0 from you? How does someone confiscate the number 0? You can't. How does someone eliminate a letter in the alphabet and says, okay, it's illegal for the letter B, for you to use the letter B for the rest of your life because that stands for Bitcoin? You can't. You can't eliminate speech. You can't eliminate letters. You can't eliminate numbers. And this is the great evolutionary step that Bitcoin took. It took value and money from the analog world to the complete digital world. Bitcoin is nowhere and everywhere at the same time. And think about this. A lot of people have a problem with the fact that Bitcoin is not physical. But I would beg you to consider that the most valuable things in our lives are not physical. We value things like love, that's not physical, more than anything. We value things like honesty, decency, peace. The things that you can't touch or see or point to are valued far greater than anything you can point to or touch. And Bitcoin has evolved to that supernatural level of not being able to be pointed to, not being able to be able to be touched, but yet looms extraordinarily valuable in our lives. We've seen music go from things you can touch to now, when's the last time you've touched an album? When's the last time you've held a movie in your hand? You can't touch these things anymore. When's the last time you pulled out an album and bored your neighbors or your friends flipping through photos of your family? They're digital now. Bitcoin has digitized the last thing to be digitized. Money. Human value. That's insane when you comprehend that, right? It's crazy.
Well, and I would argue because that is one of the most difficult thing to digitize. out there, and
That's right.
perhaps there's something after it will digitize, but to me it seems that is one of the, if not the last thing to be digitized. And that's why for decades people were trying to make it, and finally it seems that we've done it successfully. So
that's right. But I want to say one
sure, go ahead.
One final point, because your question was a good one, and I don't think I nailed the end response to that. Gold. So gold is physical. That's its failing in a new digital society. Nothing of value, of true lasting value, will be physical in the future. I believe that. Now, we did have a system, a token-based system based on gold. Gold was the base layer of money. The token on top of that base layer of value was the US dollar, or became the US dollar. So the US dollar is the token, gold was the value, all right? That system failed because who is in charge of the base layer of the value? And am I a part of that? Can I verify that? Can I see what the total supply is, what the issuance rate of that base value is? Who decides, who controls the base layer of the token? And so Bitcoin has come to fix that. It is, for the first time in history, money, which has historically always been in the hands of a human being or a group of human beings or an organization run by human beings. For the first time in the history of the human race, we have a money that is not in the hands of a single individual human being on Earth, but is available to every single human being on Earth. Wow.
That's really powerful.
That's powerful.
Yeah. That's really great. I think there's so much more there that could be added to that, but I think that ultimately is the most important thing, that it's not in control of a singular human being. That's right. Because
but available to every human being. Yeah. I get a lot of times, Oliver, but with Bitcoin, with one single Bitcoin being at $27,000, how can this not be an asset for the rich? And I think that there's unit bias there, because a single Satoshi today is actually worth 0.00006. No, 0.00266, something like that. All right, don't quote me on that number, but do the research. But the point is that it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny. One Satoshi. So unit bias is dumb in a way, but it's real. But my point is that what was my point, by the way? What was I talking about?
Well, you were making the point about unit bias and how it's difficult for people, and that's one of the things that they come to you about.
So people come to me often and say, Oliver, this is just something for the rich to speculate on and gamble on because it's $27,000 a coin at this particular point. But most people look at Bitcoin as something that in the future you're going to have to buy. I believe that there's going to be a point where you can't buy Bitcoin. I believe that we're so early that our grandkids and great-grandkids are going to say, you lived in a world where you could literally buy this? Like, we can buy it now, and our ancestors will not be able to believe that this time ever existed, in my opinion. Buying Bitcoin, listen to me carefully, buying Bitcoin is going to disappear, and maybe in your lifetime. So I believe that ultimately you're going to have to deliver value to the world to get Bitcoin. And that value had better be good enough to convince someone to let go of the scarcest asset on planet Earth and the scarcest, most valuable asset that human beings have ever known. And so I believe it's going to uplift progress, uplift the world. I think it's going to improve the human experience, because the only way you're going to be able to survive is to deliver value to your fellow human being, to deliver value to your community. And if you can't do that in a convincing enough way, you're not going to get Bitcoin and you're not going to be able to live. And so I think that day is coming, and it may not happen in my lifetime, but in your lifetime, maybe.
I'm glad that you're taking the time to learn about Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin's potential future value, both in terms of political currency units and on society as a whole. And I'm really glad that you're taking the effort to study and educate yourself about Bitcoin. However, I must make this message incredibly clear. If you are learning about Bitcoin, you must begin also learning about self-custody and taking possession of your own keys. This is really, really important. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want talking about how Bitcoin is going to skyrocket in fiat price and how the number is going to go up. You can talk about that all you want. You can daydream about this kind of vertical spike action for Bitcoin. You can daydream about this all you want. But my encouragement to you is that this is not a meme. This is not something to be taken lightly. We can think that this is a good thing, and it is a good thing ultimately for Bitcoin's long-term adoption, but this is real. Okay, this really happens in countries. It may not happen in your country for some time. It may happen in a stair-step fashion, but this is not a meme. This is not a joke. And so, therefore, you need to take self-custody really, really seriously. Okay. I work full-time in self-custody solutions for people. I help people set up their multi-sig vaults. I help people set up their estate plans. I help people with a collaborative custody partnership and collaborative custody models. Okay. This is a chart of the amount of interest we have at the Bitcoin Advisor, the company I work at. Okay. This is not me personally. This is the whole company. We've been in business 7 years. Not a single client of ours has ever lost a single sat. Okay. And we have a good number of clients, and this is our demand. My point in showing you this chart, my point in showing you this message right now is that it is increasingly urgent, increasingly important that you begin taking self-custody very seriously. I'm telling you, I'm on the inside of this all day, every day, 6 days a week, and demand for self-custody is skyrocketing. Okay. The kinds of clients we have, the number of clients we have, the conviction in the clients we have, it is only going up. Okay. And people are booking meetings with me weeks, okay, in advance. In some cases, over a month in advance. And we are in bear market. Okay. This chart right here is from October 2023. Okay. Bear, like incredible low interest globally in Bitcoin. And our demand is still skyrocketing, it's still spiking. And my encouragement is that if we have a bull run, if we have parabolic spikes such as this, where Bitcoin goes rapidly upwards in terms of price, if we have these periods of time, okay, transaction fees are going to spike. Okay, exchanges are going to halt withdrawals. Okay, people are going to panic. They're going to smash by any price. Okay, it's going to be increasingly difficult to have any time with people to help you in your self-custody setups. So first and foremost, whatever you do, whether you work with me at the Bitcoin Advisor, whether you go somewhere else, whether you figure it out on your own, whatever the case, please start figuring out self-custody. Hot wallets, cold wallets, cold wallets, single sig, multi-sig, whatever you do, just start figuring it out now, because I'm increasingly alarmed by the number of Bitcoiners that do not have self-custody. So please, if you have any Bitcoin self-custody, but especially if you have a large amount of Bitcoin in self-custody, please start taking this stuff seriously, because it's only going to be increasingly important in the future. And so, if you like to work with me, if you like to hear my opinions, perspectives, and ideas on this topic, you can find me at the Bitcoin Advisor. This is precisely why I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, because I believe this is such an important topic here. Okay. You can find me there. You can have expert guidance on how to self-custody Bitcoin, to buy, secure, and store it properly for the long term. We can have tailored strategies for you, what your long-term vision is, both for yourself, your own individual future, your retirement, and for your future generations as well. Again, multi-sig vaults, estate plans, all of these things for you. Okay, you can just book a free meeting with me here, and the link down below in the description. Again, the first consultation is completely free, where we can talk about your priorities and see if there's a value add both for you and for the Bitcoin Advisor as well. And again, our goal is to help you have generational wealth for you and your loved ones and your children without losing sleep. Okay. And that's why not only do you get a free initial consultation, but you have dozens and dozens of pages of education about multi-sig, self-custody, how to store your Bitcoin properly, things to avoid, things to pursue. Okay. Again, dozens and dozens of pages of free education for you to be learning about this increasingly important, increasingly urgent topic. Okay. And then you can learn further about the Bitcoin Advisor and why we provide much more value for half the cost of our competitors. You can learn about all this and more in that link in the description, where you can book a free consultation with me at the Bitcoin Advisor. So again, whatever you do, whether you work with me at the Bitcoin Advisor or you try to figure out on your own, please just start taking action now. Because in a couple of years, higher and higher net worth people are going to be entering the space and demanding self-custody. Okay, more and more companies, more and more charities, more and more pension funds, more and more churches, all these things, all these groups of people, all these entities are going to be coming into Bitcoin very quickly, and they'll be willing to pay the transaction fees. They'll be willing to pay whatever fiat price and get for their sats. They'll be willing to do the self-custody as fast as possible. And so my encouragement to you, again, I'm glad you're enjoying these videos. I really appreciate you subscribing and commenting and being a part of these videos and increasing your Bitcoin education. But please, please, please do not stop at the end of this video. Immediately after you watch the end of this video, please start taking your self-custody seriously, whether that's with me at the Bitcoin Advisor, again, link in the description, or it's on your own. Whatever the case, please just do it. Thank you.
Up until that point, I still was unable to get back the Bitcoin that I sold because the trader part of me would not allow me to chase so aggressively. And fortunately, I continued my journey and learning what this is. I'm still learning. I think we all are still learning. I think this is a foreign species to us, and we'll be learning about what this is, what it means for us, and the impact it's going to have on our lives into the future. I think forever. But thank goodness that the so-called bear market came when it did, because the bear market of 2022, based on the USD exchange rate, right? It's not never a bear market in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's only the opinion of the dollar that's the bear market. But this allowed me, over the course of a 6, 7, 8, 9-month period, almost 10-month period, to ultimately reach that goal. And it was a milestone that I thought that I missed forever. But thank goodness for the bear market of 2020. So to answer very shortly, my traders and I know that this is not something you trade. You trade everything else for this. You work for Bitcoin. Trading is our work. We work for Bitcoin. And I believe I'm as hardcore as believing that little to no diversification. I'm sorry if that upsets people, but diversify into what? Like what? What do you diversify in? Again, I played the game of diversification. I'm going to sprinkle my assets across all of these leaky boats, but I finally have a boat that doesn't leak. So diversify into what? There's nothing to diversify into. So I trade other things, but I trade it to live and to accumulate Bitcoin. And it has given me a new lease on life. It has given me a new lease on life. It's given me new hope. It's given me new passion. It's given me a new way of affecting other people's lives positively. And it's truly a blessing.
You said so much there that is just gold, or should I say Bitcoin? Yeah. I mean, that metaphor of the sinking ships versus the one ship that's not sinking is just such a good one. It's one I've used before. It's one that Saylor, I think, used years ago when he was describing it with open versus closed systems.
That's right.
That's
absolutely right.
You have all these light bulbs that don't turn on, and this one that does. And that one is worth an infinite number of ones that don't do it. And so I think, frankly, Oliver, the most impressive thing that I've learned about you so far, but both in talking now and also online, I think the most impressive thing is that despite your decades of trading, being in that trader's mindset, and having this view of acquiring more and more dollars, or having this view of everything as a trade, to this quickly and this early in Bitcoin's adoption, understand that this is something that is different in that sense. Frankly, I think that's the most impressive thing. I know that you've been very successful in your career. I know that you have accumulated a lot of wealth for yourself.
And I will tell you this, that that's not an easy feat. It's not an easy feat for someone in my space, in my career, that has actually been rewarded by the opposite activity. It's not very easy for someone who's been successful in the traditional fiat-based world to really get this. And so I do recognize that. And I come up across the resistance because I know quite a number of people in the industry over the last few decades, and very few have gotten the bug or seen the value proposition of this brand new thing. It's only a matter of time. But I will say this, that this year, 2023, is probably the biggest year in my very short history of talking to people about Bitcoin, this is the biggest year of people asking me about Bitcoin. And that is a sign of the future. Every 3 to 4 years, the number of people who in the world, especially in the traditional financial community, I believe that the number of people in that community who understands at least a portion of the value proposition of Bitcoin, I think that number grows. I think the number, obviously, of people, regular people outside of that space, the number grows. And that's ultimately what puts the cycle floors into Bitcoin. And let me just say something about that. My specialty throughout the majority, not entirely, but the majority of my professional trading career has been from a technical perspective. And one of the things that my following have a hard time understanding is that, Oliver, you've always been a trader, number one, and you've always looked at things technically. Why won't you do that with Bitcoin? And I just refuse to, in a very big way, because I don't want to send the message that this is something that should be timed, that this is something that should be traded. Timing for what? It just should be accumulated for the rest of your living days. You know, freedom is not something you sell, and I believe that Bitcoin is freedom. Freedom is not something you trade. You don't go from being a slave to free and then saying, I'm going to sell my freedom to go back to slavery. We don't do that. But if I were to approach Bitcoin from a technical point of view and try to explain it to someone from a technical point of view, I would suggest that they stop looking at Bitcoin's price from the high to the low. So stop looking at Bitcoin from 69,000 to 15,000. Stop looking at Bitcoin from 20,000 to 3,200. Stop looking at Bitcoin from $1,000 to $50. Stop looking at it from the highs to the lows and look at it from the lows to the lows. So when Bitcoin was 6 cents, low, then it went to $3, a low. Then it dropped to $12, a low. Then it dropped to $30, the low. Every low is higher. Then it dropped to 100. Then it dropped to 1,000. Then it dropped to 3,200. Then it dropped to 15,000. Where's the next low going to be? 60, 80? So if you focus from a technical point of view on Bitcoin's lows and you forget about the drops from the highs to the lows and just track the lows, this will keep you peaceful, or more peaceful, I should say, and it'll keep you more sound. But even that is a bit dangerous, because it still suggests that there's a timing element to this. And I don't want people to walk away from our talk thinking that this is something you time. That what we're dealing with is we're judging something very special through the eyes of something that's not special. And when you're timing this, you're respecting the thing that's not as special more than the thing that's special. You understand? So in my opinion, whenever you have the unspecial in excess of your needs, it doesn't matter. Just get the special thing. You understand? Like
Yeah.
there's no timing of what's the most special thing. You know, there's no timing. And when if I can get more people to stop looking at the US dollar's opinion of what Bitcoin is and just look at what Bitcoin is, the US dollar valuation or the US dollar's opinion is not going to matter. Bitcoin is not volatile. The US dollar's opinion of Bitcoin is volatile. The Bitcoin has not changed. Bitcoin is the most constant thing we have in the universe. Bitcoin is consistent. It doesn't break its promises. It's not wishy-washy. It doesn't wake up one morning different than it did the last morning. Bitcoin is not the volatile thing. Everything else measured against Bitcoin is volatile. Everything else is broken. Everything else is wishy-washy. And when you realize this, you stop looking at the opinions of the broken items. You stop looking at what the broken items are suggesting is the value of the most valuable thing. Now, I know it takes time and maybe, hundreds of hours of study to maybe get yourself to that point. And that's what I think is somewhat, is what keeps the adoption. Adoption is amazing, but what keeps the adoption not even being more amazing is that it does require that you understand some basic things about money and value and time and energy. And we have lost these values. This is why people today are putting their family's value into monkeys and frogs and dogs, because we've lost this sense of value. We've lost the sense of what's real, what you should spend your time, which is the stuff that life is made of. You spend your time and your effort and your energy on a freaking picture, a JPEG, a frog, a dog, a cat. Everyone has, a lot of people have, this system has caused us to not want to invest time, and we've lost sense of what is real, what is of value. And Bitcoin brings those principles and values back to us. It teaches us patience. It lowers our time preference. It stops us from wasting valuable resources. It causes us to honor more. And I, for one, say, I welcome those things, because no one can tell me they can look throughout the world and see that things are really, really swimmingly well right now, because they aren't. And I believe that it's at the core of this is the loss of these values which Bitcoin brings back to us. And I'm sorry for ranting, but guys, I get so passionate.
I think you said great things. There's so much, we can go 100 different ways. I think a fascinating irony here is that you've spent your career having everything as a trade, and now as the dollar continues to have more and more and more weakness, as we continue to distort it from reality, you're having a rant about JPEGs, NFTs, and rampant speculation there. The funny thing is that as the money we have is deteriorating, everyone is incentivized to become a trader. Absolutely. And yet, you, one of, arguably the best traders out there, or definitely the top 1% of traders out there at the very least, 100%. You are doing the exact opposite, where now you're not trading the better money. That as the money gets worse, everyone else wants to trade more, and now you're not trading the money that's better because the money that's better is just better.
Yeah, it's kind of strange to me in a way, because I believe that me being a trader has helped me, which I believe I started off our conversation talking about. Yeah. I believe that it's helped me to see this faster than perhaps I wouldn't have. But at the same time, for some, it actually prevents them from seeing it faster. So it's a little weird. It's a little weird to me in that respect. But you're absolutely right, Luke, in that you know that something is wrong with the money when there is an ultimate disrespect for the money. And that's what we're seeing when people are willing to take the money that they have and throw it away. And there is a fundamental lack of respect for the money. And why this is dangerous is because money is actually life itself. So you give, as an example, you give a week of your life, your time, your energy, your effort, all of your intelligence, all of your capability, all of your skill to someone else, another organization or an employer. And in exchange, that is your life. That is who you are. You wake up on a certain time, you take transportation to your job if that's what you do, or what have you. You give your life, which is your time, effort, and energy. And in exchange for your life, you get pieces of paper back or electronic digits on your screen. If you are willing to throw your life away, throw those digits away, throw those pieces of paper away without regard, with a lack of respect, it means that you don't respect what you're giving your life to, what you're giving your time and energy to, right? And so that is proof that the money is broken that you're giving your life to. Why should the money that you're giving your life to be controlled and manipulated by someone else? Isn't that a slave? That's financial slavery to me, right? So for instance, in slavery times, slaves in America gave their time, their energy, their effort, their whole existence in exchange for shelter, clothing, food. Today, we give our life, time, effort, skill, intelligence in exchange for paper or wire digits on a screen to go buy the food, the shelter. What's the difference? All right, I give it to you, or I give you the token and you go get it. It's the same financial slavery. And the fact that you see people squandering their money, it is a sign that they're squandering their life. And it's a sign that they don't value the token that they've received in exchange for the life that they've given. It's broken. And Bitcoin has come to fix that. All right? Bitcoin has come to fix that. And over time, I believe that an increasing number of people are going to realize all over the world that this is a money that you can give your life to. And it is a money that is the most valuable thing. Your life is valuable. So the money that corresponds to the effort and life you've given is valuable. And it's going to be returned to something that you honor and that you don't let go so easily unless you receive value in return. And you're not throwing it in the air or throwing it at frogs and dogs and cats and everything else. Sorry for the rant.
No, that's really powerful. And actually, I think ironically that addresses one of the main concerns people have about it. It's like, well, if money is scarce, then the economy can't function, blah, blah, blah. And the answer to that is exactly what you said. When the money is valuable, when the money is a form of monetary hope for the future, you only exchange it for things that are actually valuable to yourself and therefore valuable to society. And right now, we're at the point where that's not the case. And so we finance things that are not valuable to society. It's that's fascinating there.
You got it.
But,
boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Boom. I guess one more question for you would be tying it back into that hope that you were just mentioning. You are in Colombia frequently. You're in South America frequently. I don't know your story or background before you got into trading and before you got into Wall Street. You know, it sounds like that you didn't have the means for an Ivy League education and all that. So,
No.
So I guess when it comes to that, we've been talking about the monetary hope. We've been talking about Bitcoin. We've been talking about the technology change, all that. When it comes to, for me, what I'm passionate about is about what this could do for society at reducing the number of preventable deaths and reducing the amount of suffering for humans. And when it came to slavery, like you were just saying a minute ago, to me the beautiful thing is that there is one difference between slavery of the past and the monetary slavery today, being that this time we can opt out. We're able to do that. And so I guess for you, when it comes to opting out, when it comes to choosing that hopeful alternate, what do you hope to see in the world at large in the future?
I believe that what I would like to see is what Bitcoin has the greatest chance of delivering. And that is an ability for every single person ever to be born to be able to be free, to choose what they want to do, the path they want to travel along, the value they want to specialize in to bring to the world. When you have a money that is not debased, that you can store all of your efforts in, you can stop your worry about the future diminishes. And it's the worry about the future that causes, or the inability to even handle or take care of the future, and the worry about the future that causes, I believe, the decay in society. When I was a kid, I learned about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there's a pyramid that basically had at the base level all the base needs of a human being: food, clothing, shelter. And the people who live predominantly slaving and working to get food, clothing, and shelter, they live a very rudimentary, almost slave-like existence. Their every day is, I need tomorrow to be able to eat. I need tomorrow to be able to be clothed and have a roof over my head. There's a group of people that supersedes that level, and they no longer have to worry about food, shelter, and clothing. And so they go to the next level, and that level might be, I want to be honored. I want to have a certain social standing. I want esteem. So the need actually gets more refined as you don't have to think about the base things in life. Now you need something higher, something more sublime. And then these levels get finer and finer to the point where you become, according to Abraham Maslow, you become a self-actualized person. And this is the highest state of a human being, which is the state where what you do is not because of something else, that your actions don't have a reason, that they are spontaneously born out of the well of creativity. When an action is because of something, it is not creative, it is forced. So if I have to go here because you demand that of me, that is not a creative decision to go there. And so when all of your basic needs are taken care of, you become a creative individual. And that is the nature of God, to be creative. And as the human experience continues to evolve, and I know this waxes a bit philosophical and maybe religious-like, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to go there. As the human experience has been over time seeking this or evolving to this self-actualized state of, I don't do something because I'm forced. I don't do this because this compels me to do that. I do it because it's the right thing this moment. I do it because it's spontaneously truth to me or what have you. And I think that that's what I want to see for the future. More individuals living their life, not living trapped inside of the desires or the demands of something outside of themselves, to live creative lives, to do what you love, to be who you want to be, and having a base layer of money that only increases your value over time, gives you the ability to do this more than a money that diminishes your value and causes you to have to stay on the hamster wheel of working harder for less every single year of your life. Bitcoin reverses that to where you work less for more every year of your life in Bitcoin terms. And this frees you from the lower levels of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if that went over very well or whether it went over people's head or whether I explained it incorrectly, but that's what I would love to see for humanity going forward. And I think Bitcoin has come on the scene to be the greatest possibility of us achieving that.
I think it did. I think it resonated with me. So I assume it resonated with other people that are watching. I mean, I agree with the premise. I suppose the way I would put it is that the truth will set you free. And in this case, when we have the base layer of society and the current age and the material world being misinformation and lies, having something that is a source of truth, having something that is objective, having something that is decentralized in the face of that is very difficult to see from within the web of lies, but once you understand it, it's very difficult to unsee. So
well, and if I could try to just very short, if I were to give you a US dollar bill or $100 bill, and I put a time limit on when you can spend that for value, and let's say over a 1 year period, that $100 bill becomes unusable, unspendable. You are going to be incentivized to just do something with it.
Yeah.
All right? Because the value of it is declining. And this is the deterioration, in my opinion, of society when the time preference of a society is forced to be short-term oriented that way, that it breaks down all decision-making of the society. But if I were to give you $100 bill and the time went the other way, where the 100 becomes 200 becomes another 100 every 4 years, and another 100, just as a base example, another 100, you are less incentivized to waste that value, and you have freedom now to seek out things from the heart. You have a greater freedom to seek out things that you enjoy, things that mean something to you, versus being forced to, well, I've got to put this somewhere because it's going to be zero in a certain period of time. And so the money as we know, there's this saying in the Bitcoin community: fix the money, you fix the world. Fix the money, you fix the incentives. You fix the incentives, you change human beings. You change human beings, you change the world.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, man. It's an honor. It's good to have you. First time in Miami.
Yeah,
Miami. I live here in Florida part of the year, so it's amazing to get him here for the first time.
Yeah,
so
well, thank you.
Glad to have him.
Appreciate your time.
Man. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ciao. Boom.